Are we live? Are we live? I can't tell. And broadcast. Yeah, I guess we're live. I don't have my glasses on because I'm vain, and it says I'm all fafushnik today. Let's just be real. Because I am attaining a new level of success. This is very exciting to me. Uh, I'm going to be, well, IRS. I'm behaving myself. I'm going to pay in all. This stuff goes around. Everybody hears it, but this is my second five-figure month, and it's really wonderful. And I'm going to talk about a card that I pulled today that's perfect, Gimel, which talks about growth. It's all about growth, being in a period of growth. I also coincidentally happened to open a thought a day, this Julia Cameron wonderful journal that's really modeled after some of the 12-step, AA meditations. Every day of the year, she has some thoughts that she writes that you can ponder relative to being a creative professional or not, a creative, an artist. And today was all about cognitive dissonance in a sense. And when I say cognitive dissonance, what I mean is what you consciously know, and how you feel cognitively, how you experience yourself can start to be out of sync with what you have become or what a situation has become. And so it is with growth. You grow out of things and grow into things. So let's dig into Gimel, shall we? Now, because I'm flying by the seat of my pants with wall-to-wall clients today, I didn't have time to prepare in the usual manner. So that's a reason, not an excuse. There are always reasons. Now I have to kind of acclimate at a new altitude so that I plan my life better and make sure I'm better prepared for live streams. So please forgive the fact that you're going to see two other cards here. I didn't have time to isolate Gimel. All right, so the card that we're talking about, Gimel, is on the upper right. It looks like it has, you got the one on the left looks like it has, a little zayin. It looks like it's like a unicycle. It's standing on one leg, unicycle, or it's like a one-legged letter. And Gimel to its right also has a crown on top, but it's a very interesting letter because it really does, and I'm not the first person to observe this. Kabbalists have said it looks like a person running after another person to support them. And to me, how this letter looks actually is like that trust exercise. It looks to me like the person wearing the crown, which I would identify with the self, is falling into the arms of another. It looks like a smaller entity, but that's just visually speaking. When we grow, we have to trust and let ourselves fall into the newness of expansion. Gimel is also a confluence, in a way, of it's the third letter of the alphabet. The first two, Aleph, is associated sometimes with oneness, also exile. And Beit is associated with duality. Is it duality? I want to double check that because I don't want to misquote what I learned, referring to my little wonderful Kabbalah card deck where it talks about that. It brings Beit and Gimel together is basically the thing, right? It brings exile together with paradise. Beit is associated with paradise. So if we bring those two things together, that sense of aloneness, exile, with paradise, you arrive in a new place, which is growth, which is Gimel, which actually is a duality in a sense of more than one thing. And so if you are feeling a sense of stagnation, maybe you're not in a period of great growth. And the reason I pulled this card for you is that you're feeling stagnant. You're feeling bored. In that case, this is a great card to meditate on. because its energy is all about cultivating more growth in your life in one way or another. And it could be more growth towards yourself, or it could be growth in relation to a friend or a loved one. That makes me think of relationships in general. Uh, Relationships are a rocket ship to growth. I'm not the first one to say that either. When I lived in an ashram back in the 80s, Guru Dev said that. Relationships are a rocket ship to growth. Boy, when you have tied the knot with somebody, it is a lifelong mirror that you have engaged with. And what I have had to learn as somebody who's been married for almost 30 years, in order to stay on the rocket, right, I've had to learn to stretch. And so has my husband, right? We have learned to stretch. We have grown each other. So I would say that relationships end when one person refuses to stretch anymore. Maybe they can't. Maybe, well, who knows? But I think it's important to explore that, because a lot of people confuse settling for a relationship or settling to be in a relationship with stretching. To stretch is not to settle, right? To stretch is not to settle. You've settled for a relationship if you're with somebody whom you can no longer talk about the tough things in life, with whom you can no longer work on the sex, with whom you can no longer take chances, talk about money and sex. Those are two things you got to be able to talk about in a marriage, right? If you can no longer have those conversations, somebody has stopped being willing to stretch. And if you stay in that relationship where one person no longer stretches, then you also have stopped stretching and have settled. You have settled at their level. Okay? So I think it's important to make a distinction in relationships. And I didn't know this was going to be all about relationships, but it's important to make a distinction in relationships between when you are having a hard time stretching for the sake of the other, or when the other has ceased to be willing to work on the relationship and you have stopped stretching because you needed to acclimate at their level, which means literally settling at their level. Somebody can't stop hitting you and you don't leave. You've settled. Okay. But everybody's afraid of that. I think one of the things that keeps people from commitments and having relationships is the fear of settling. And of course, that is only fed by FOMO, the fear of missing out. There might be somebody better. And that is truly missing the whole point of a relationship, of having a deep relationship. It isn't even so much with who. It is about willingness. I mean, certainly with who is a big factor, right? It is not about, the mistake though isn't about necessarily whom you choose. It is to continue to accept things that are not acceptable, right? So when one person thinks there's a problem, and it means that a conversation must be had. And usually the problem isn't because of one or the other, it's because of both. Usually it's a situation where each person needs to stretch in some way one may not be aware of. So I'm hoping that that is a distinction I've made for you in the sameness of what's going on in this Groundhog Day we're all in, of life seeming to repeat itself day after day and look the same, right? In a way, we're stuck in these petri dishes. So if you're feeling stagnant in yours, perhaps, or bored, you have settled in some way. Maybe it's not in relationship, but There's some growth to be had. Get curious. What have you stopped doing or given up on in your life? What could use some reinvigorating? Possibly the very thing that you've allowed to go fallow is the very thing that's going to feed you and grow you. Perhaps you've stopped having dreams at all because you've been disappointed so many times. And so you, instead of anting up again and coming up with a vision for your future and learning how to do it properly, because folks, you know the old expression, a dream without a deadline is just that, a dream, a fantasy. Ante up again. Let yourself have a vision and then get somebody who can help you realize it, because that's actually a skill set. That is my stock in trade as a coach. Coaches across the board, whoever they coach, are trained in the practice of realizing and quantifying goals for people, with people. I'm not realizing the goal for you, but I am helping you break down what it is you want, understand what it is you really want, because sometimes it'll be some external thing like I want to be famous and, whatever, and there's actually something else that you really want. Once we get clear about what you really want as a coach and a client, and perhaps part of it is recognition because you're doing great work and you're just not getting that recognition. Somehow you're keeping yourself hidden, or there are risks that you're not taking. You can't figure it all out in the darkness of your own mind. I suggest you get with a coach. I don't care if it's me or someone else, right? But I always want to get in the habit of, in 4 days, I'm going to lose that. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'm getting a message from StreamYard. Very, very distracting. In 4 days, if you want to keep growing, and today is Gimel, about growth, if you want to continue to grow, I highly recommend that you get out of isolation. And goodness knows we have permission to stay isolated these days. But there's a difference between isolation and solitude. Solitude is productive. Isolation isn't. You may need to get out of isolation to get out of stagnation, in which case I highly recommend you go here, go.oncehub.com/coach Rahti. And here we go. Boom. I got to go. There it is. There it is. If you're watching, there it is. Go to that website. Schedule a conversation with me, because there's no reason for you to stay stuck. I'm here. Let's get going. All right. I'd love to work with you at this point. If I have time, I'd love to work with you. Let's get going. All right. So that's it for today. Gimel, growth. Take a screenshot. Look at that beautiful picture of trust. A larger figure falling into the arms of another. Smaller, actually. Smaller figure, and that is trust. Trusting the unknown. How small is the unknown? You can't see it, right? Meditate upon that. And I'll be back here on Tuesday of next week. If you enjoyed this, you got something out of it, please share. If you have suggestions for topics, please share. I'm slowly working through the Kabbalah deck. Eventually there will be no more cards, and so I'm always looking for new directions. All right. So thank you again for being here, for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you on Tuesday.